Hello and welcome to coverage of Grand Prix Omaha. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Reed Duke. We've got Matthias Hunt versus Scott Lipp lined up. Both players with an impressive 7-0 start here, Reed. And, you know, we had talked about it a little earlier, but 7-0 is in that really, that mode where you really want to buckle down and focus right now because you know how important these last two rounds are on day one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, usually you feel like if you can finish day one at 8-1 or even 9-0, you know, you're in prime position to make a great run. 7-2, it's tough. You usually got to go undefeated on the second day. So yeah, these rounds are very big for these players.
Yeah, going undefeated on day two is such a tall order. You're playing against players, you know, you kind of worked your way through some of the lesser experienced players or the players that, you know, maybe brought decks that weren't such a great choice for the tournament, and you're starting to really see the heavy hitters and the people that you see all the time, and you know, you're like, oh, I see that guy at the Pro Tour every week, or I test with him, you know.
Yeah, it's a tough feeling to be like, okay, you know, I played my heart out today. I went 5-2 or whatever it might be, and then tomorrow I got to have a much better record against much better opponents. But I mean, it does happen. So
that's true.
As long as you're not out of it, you're not out of it.
Of course, that's right. So Matthias Hunt here has a Sylvan Advocate of all things on the battlefield here. He went for a Nissa on turn 3, but Scott said no, and played Negate on that.
Yep.
Looks like Scott's on this red-blue control deck.
Well, slow start from both players because I actually have a spoiler that Scott is not playing red-blue control.
Oh,
he's playing
a
Temur beatdown deck, complete with double green mana cost Bristling Hydra.
Oh no! And he's on Mountain Duel here?
Yeah, but he's been successful in neutralizing Matthias's first two plays, so he just found his green mana, and we're definitely going to have a game.
Look at this. Matthias is like, oh, the plot thickens. Sheltered Thicket, changing the outlook here a fair bit, I would assume.
So Matthias Hunt, he was our Rookie of the Year a handful of years ago.
God, I was going to say a couple of years ago, but that was not a couple of years ago, was it?
No, it was towards the beginning of my career on the Pro Tour. He was the Rookie of the Year. He took a little bit of a breather from the competitive scene, and he did a lot of coverage.
Mm-hmm.
Still definitely a major figure in the Magic community, but I always love watching him play because he has a tendency to bring off the beaten path decks. This time he's got black-green Constrictor, which is nothing really new, but he's going a bit retro with Glint Sleeve Siphoner, something you used to see only in the black, like the dedicated energy decks.
And also, you know, we saw that Sylvan Advocate there talking about going retro.
Yep, definitely.
Okay, well, it looks like Scott has managed to kind of claw his way back in, at least mana-wise, because now not only does he have the Thicket to make green mana, but he's found himself a Servant of the Conduit as well.
Yeah, this is still about as slow as you can be moving forward with first a tapped dual land and now, you know, a mana creature hoping to set up 2 green mana.
I mean, Reed,
on turn 100.
When I saw Spirebuff Canal with 2 mountains, it wasn't the speed at which I was concerned. It was, is he even going to get to green mana?
Yep.
It looks like he's unlocked that particular achievement, but slow indeed.
Yeah, and I'll say this much. The Temur colors are not particularly good at killing an 8/8 creature.
How would you describe this deck from Scott, by the way? Because, you know, I heard you say, well, like kind of beatdown-ish, but like he played Negate. This is game 1.
Well, you could almost describe it as like a hate deck for the decks you're going to face in this format.
Oh.
In a way, it looks like what the Aetherworks Marvel decks look like after sideboarding to try to beat one another. So he does not have Aetherworks Marvel in his deck. It's just a energy-based creature deck, complete with you know, a little bit of removal, Harnessed Lightning, and a couple other 1 and 2 ofs, and a lot of negates main deck. So his goal is just keep it simple, stick a resilient threat, and then sit back on his reactive cards.
Okay.
Normally, you know, it seems it's been working quite well for him so far today, but this game he stumbled a bit, and getting behind what's now a 10-10 trample is not where he wants to be, or anybody wants to
or
be.
Or nobody does. But, I mean, this is just a really tough spot for Scott at this point.
Scott does have one card in his deck that would be phenomenal in this spot, which is Confiscation
Does he have
Coup.
Confiscation Coup in his main?
Yes, one of, and I think I might see it in his hand, but
No.
he's still missing.
No, he's got double blue.
You're right.
And he has enough energy
wow.
to make blue.
Just when I was ready to call this game as over, he's got the perfect
Does he
card.
have it?
And just enough energy.
What a blowout. I'd like to spend all of this, thank you. Is this actually going to work? Oh, man.
Wow.
He just stole a 10-10 trampler. Oh, man. That was a sweet confiscation coup. That's how you do it right there. Matthias is like, take it. I'm not going to hand it to you. Oh, what a beating. Now what is Matthias Hunt supposed to do? It looks like all he's done is draw a bunch of lands here. He still has a Whining Constrictor.
Yeah, his draw has been lackluster and was very reliant on that Verdurous Gearhulk. So now finding himself in a position where he has to both rebuild his army and answer the 10-10 that's now on the other side of the table. This is just about the biggest swing you can see in a game of Magic.
Oof.
Man, Confiscation Coup is one of my favorite cards in this standard format. I love mind control effects, but normally mind control effects tend to be exploitable in some way. Like if they come in the form of a aura enchant creature, you can either disenchant the aura or you can bounce the creature to your hand or something like that, get rid of it. Confiscation Coup is just, boom, no questions asked. It's mine.
It's a sorcery. It just happens. Unreal.
Can even take non-creature permanents, or sorry, non-creature, non-land permanents as well, which comes up a lot with Aetherworks Marvel.
Yeah. Target artifact or creature. In this case, it took both.
Yeah.
Kind of. Okay, well, let's take a look at this now, Reed, because Matthias Hunt has found another Verdurous Gearhulk. And with the Whining Constrictor, that is going to give him a heck of a lot of power and toughness to maybe block the opposing 10-10.
Interesting. So I thought that he might choose to, just make a 10-10 of his own and trade off. Looks like he's going to split his counters so that he has two lethal threats and perhaps put Scott Lipp in a position where he can't attack with the Verdurous Gearhulk.
Yeah, I mean, at least as the board sits, it doesn't work that way, though, right? Like, a Scott can chump block and then eat the other threat.
Yeah. So Matthias can't win the game through the Verdurous Gearhulk, but he decided that rather than wanting to trade off and have both players with nothing, he wanted to just, complicate the board state and leave a bunch of doors open for if he can find a way to remove the Gearhulk on Scott's side.
It also could dissuade Scott from attacking with his own Gearhulk if he feels like he needs to give it back. So it's a really interesting line here from Matthias.
In concept, I like his approach because Scott's drawing out of a mana screw. He's still got 5 cards in his hand. If you just trade off and both players have nothing, but Scott has 5 cards in his hand, you're going to lose. Just plain and simple.
Yep.
And this is not a stellar position for Matthias, but there are a lot of things that can happen from here that lead to him winning the game, which is probably not true if he had taken the other line.
One other thing to consider for Matthias Hunt is that he does have a Hissing Quagmire. Actually, it looks like 2 of them down there on the bottom of his lance that he may be able to leverage either during blocking or during attacking to maybe push through some damage since Scott's so low, force some trades, or maybe even end up trading off for that big 10-10 Gearhulk down the line. Just another factor that Scott and Matthias are going to have to keep in mind as they work their way through this, what's become a pretty complicated board. What does Scott have? What are you up to, Scott? Another Rogue Refiner. Well, he's just on that grind now, isn't he, Reed?
Yep. He's just deploying the cards in his hand. Now that he's stabilized the board, he feels like he has plenty of time and just wants to, look for his opportunities. So we mentioned Matthias Hunt, former Rookie of the Year. Scott Lipp, a really fun player to watch too. He's a Grand Prix winner from last year, in addition to several other top 8s and good finishes. One thing that I appreciate about Scott is he's a very balanced player. His Grand Prix win was in limited, but we've also seen him do well with a pretty wide range of strategies in constructed.
He's a very solid player.
Yeah, he is quite good and a really nice guy.
Spanky.
Is that his nickname?
Yeah, look at his sleeves.
Oh, yeah. When I met him this morning, he said, "You guys are in my neck of the woods now." So he's feeling the home field advantage and wants to make a big show of it.
I think he's from Kansas City.
Okay.
If I'm not incorrect.
Well, speaking relatively, given that
No, I know. Yeah, that counts.
There are not too many Grand Prix in this part of the world.
Oh no, this is his stomping ground, no doubt about it. I think that's where he lives, though. Yeah, Scott's a really nice guy. All right, well, they've made a bit of a mess here, haven't they? Big creatures, some small ones, some value, some lands. And now they're stuck trying to negotiate through all of this.
Unlike some of the other black-green decks that we've seen on camera today, Matthias does not have Traverse the Ulvenwald, so he's drawing a bit thinner than some other black-green decks might be in a situation like this. He's just got a couple more Verdurous Gearhulks that are the cards he's really hoping to see.
Look at this attack, Reed.
So one of these creatures is just getting sacrificed to the giant Gearhulk. The good thing about this attack is it does force Scott to chump block.
Yes,
he can't take the hit from
two.
that Constructor.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, and he gets him down to 2. So good job being aggressive when being defensive was not going to work. It's not great losing your 6/6 trample, but keep the pressure on and keep the question marks hanging over this game.
Yeah, I mean, Scott's got to feel like he's in a pretty precarious position here now. He's still stable. He, right now, looks like, he's ahead on board. He's got good blocks, but it's precarious.
Certainly precarious. A card that could play an interesting role if Hunt was to draw it is Glint Sleeve Siphoner. Just 2-power menace creature, requires Scott Lipp to have a lot more blockers to be able to survive. 4 copies of Glint Sleeve Siphoner. And Scott has everything that he could want in his hand. He's got a Tireless Tracker, which will give him a long run advantage. He's got a Glory Bringer, where he can start unloading damage in the air. That's probably not top priority right now. And then Chandra, Torch of Defiance, is another card that he can use to just ensure his own advantage in a board stall situation.
Did he have a Magma Spray or something in hand? A red card? Or is that just Chandra?
Chandra and Glory Bringer
Chandra's
is what I see.
Gotcha. Magma Spray would have been nice. Little insurance against that hissing Quagmire.
Yep.
But he's going to go with Tireless Tracker and play an island.
And you can bet that Scott is mapping out a couple turns in advance here, thinking, how much damage do I have to deal this turn if I want to win the game over the course of the next 2 or 3 turns? And, 10-power trample creature and a Glory Bringer, that's a lot of damage when he's ready to start attacking.
Certainly is. My goodness, that was a nice turn for him. Tireless Tracker, land, make a clue, play Glory Bringer.
Yeah. If Hunt was to draw a no questions asked removal spell and take care of the Verdurous Gearhulk, Scott Lipp's still in chump block mode. He cannot take a hit from that Winding Constrictor. So he, Hunt, hypothetically, let's say he was to draw something like Never Return, kill the Gearhulk, fire up the Quagmire, attack with both. That's going to deal with all 3 creatures on Scott Lipp's side.
He doesn't have them, does he?
No, he does not have a lot of answers to that Gearhulk at all.
He's got 4 Fatal Push, which isn't going to get the job done.
Nope. he's just thinking, so close. I was so close.
Yeah. I like the line that Matthias Hunt took, though. I don't think it was ever a line that just said, well, I'm just going to win this game. It was, I need a few things to go right for me. And then I give myself a chance to win a game that I'm not winning otherwise. But it feels like Scott has wrestled control of this game enough from Matthias Hunt that it's going to take something absolutely extraordinary from him to be able to actually win. He's just going to test Scott Lipp. Say, do you want to trade off something here? And Scott says, yeah, I don't want to die. And it was a long tusk cub as the follow-up play here for Matthias.
Could become a 6-6.
It just did. Whining Constrictor doing its thing.
It's funny. Hunt is really just, slain by his own sword in this game, because he could have overwhelmed like even a bunch of 5/5 and 6/6 creatures, but the fact that his Gear Hulk became a 10/10 and then turned against him just limited his options so much. I mean, his answers, like you mentioned, Fatal Push, Blossoming Defense to win a close combat, nothing that can just get through a 10/10.
And it's just been sitting there kind of mocking him since, hasn't it?
It has.
It says, I'll be home soon. Just visiting a friend. And there's that Chandra Torch of Defiance now for Scott.
It can combine with the Glorybringer to take out one of the creatures, but I'm not sure if that's the decision that Scott Lipp will decide to make. He could easily just plus for either another non-land card or 2 damage. But he should be careful here, because if he devotes a lot of resources to trying to kill a creature and Hunt has a well-timed Blossoming Defense, that could open a door for something to happen. Oh, geez. If there's a Blossoming Defense here, this game changes a lot.
Oh, you see Hunt, he's shaking his head.
And Scott could have also decided to do this.
To do the Chandra part after?
Well, he could have, although the way he did it allows him to attack with Verdurous Gear Hulk with a little bit
for more damage.
More breathing room.
Yeah.
Okay, no Blossoming Defense.
Oh, dodges a bullet there.
But Scott's going to want to produce another blocker. Maybe if Hunt...
Looks like he's going to cash in 6 of his 7 energy to take down the Long Tusk Cub. And now that he knows that Matthias doesn't have the Blossoming Defense, he can just confidently fire that off.
Yeah, no haste creatures or burn spells in this black-green deck.
And that does do it. Wow, what a game. That was a great game to watch. Scott Lipp eventually wins game 1. We'll be back with more live Magic from GP Omaha after these messages. here at Grand Prix Omaha. I am Marshall Sutcliffe. I'm in the booth with Reed Duke, and we're kind of getting lined up here for Game 2, Matthias Hunt versus Scott Lipp. Let's take a look, though, at Austin Collins versus Brad Nelson on our side table.
So Brad playing Temur Marvel. It's a deck we've seen before. And Austin Collins, his own take on black-green. His deck is a little bit different from what we see from Matthias Hunt. Austin Collins has more of a Delirium theme with Grimflayer, Traverse the Ulvenwald, and a bit more balanced answer suite. Relevantly, a big choice that he's making compared to other black-green decks is the full 4 Dissenter's Deliverance.
Brad spinning the wheel here.
Yeah, and already up a game, so looking to be in very solid position to win the match.
Though he can't imagine that he's hit an Ulamog at this point.
No. But this is exactly the situation the Marvel players want to face. They want to...
Ulvenwald Hydra?
Yeah, that's a new one.
That's going to let him go find a land.
Yeah, and what it's going to do is stabilize the board and hopefully, from Brad Nelson's perspective, allow him to untap and activate the Marvel again.
Ulvenwald Hydra costs 6 mana, has reach, and its power and toughness are each equal to the number of lands you control. And when it enters the battlefield, you can go get a land. You can see that Brad ended up getting an Ether Hub. You can get whatever land you want and put it on the battlefield tapped.
So the Marvel players pair this with Shrine of the Forsaken Gods to help them hardcast Ulamog Ceaseless Hunger.
I see.
This is good, both from an overall strategy point, if the opponent's trying to counter your Marvels or dispossess them. Also just helps you with those awkward draws where you draw 2 Ulamogs early in the game.
It's also just huge. He just attacked for 7.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's, I think that most of the time when people look at cards for standard, all right, by the way, Hydra down here to never to return. But, raw power and toughness isn't usually what people look for. They look for enter the battlefield abilities, getting value, and then the power and toughness ends up being a little bit secondary. Unless it's egregious, like in the case of, Verdurous Gearhulk or something where you're like, come on, that's just too much. But I got to say, every time there's a card like that Ulvenwald Hydra, that power and toughness is good, right? That thing was a 7/7 going to be an 8/8 the next turn. Like, it's a big problem.
I blocked an Emrakul with a Ulvenwald Hydra.
You did?
And I mean successfully blocked.
You just said...
My creature lived.
That's insane. Wow, good for you. In the meantime, the board has been successfully cleared by Austin Collins, except for that one pesky permanent Aetherworks Marvel, which Brad is just sort of patiently staring down at 7 energy. Unfortunately for Austin, he has a great card here with Tyrus Tracker, but the bad side is he doesn't have a land. He's just going to pass the turn back, and now this game's over. So that was Brad Nelson, 8-0 here in in Omaha, with Temur Marvel. But still, good for Brad. Big run for him.
Yeah. He's also coming off first place in Star City Games Open last weekend. So he's definitely playing good Magic now. So, with a deck like Scott's, I don't envy being his opponent when you go to sideboarding. Because you've seen Temur-colored lands, you've seen energy cards, you've seen Harnessed Lightning.
Negate.
You don't really know what to do. You don't know if they have Marvel. You don't know if they're beating down. You don't know if they're closer to a blue-red control deck like we originally thought. So I'm sure whatever Hunt's plan was coming into the tournament against Temur, he's going to have to adjust on the fly based on what he has seen and what he suspects of Scott Lipp's deck. On Scott's side of the table, I think the biggest pickup is a second copy of the card that won him Game 1, Confiscation Coup. Just excellent against black-green creatures.
You think that was good in Game 1, huh?
I do, yeah.
I don't know. It only killed a 10/10 Trampler and made a 10/10 Trampler for 5 mana.
So both players also have Sky Sovereign console flagship in their sideboards, which could be quite important. Interesting little dynamic is if Hunt thinks he's playing against Marvel, he may have boarded in his Manglehorns. So, I don't know. There's a lot of question marks hanging over the way these two players could have sideboarded. But in the meantime, it's pretty much going to be the same type of game we saw in Game 1, where they're battling with creatures. Scott Lipp has a couple haymakers in the form of Confiscation Coup.
Well, Bristling Hydra for Matthias Hunt threatens to start getting some attacks in, and with 6 energy, it seems well protected against spot removal at this point.
Yeah, and Confiscation Coup.
There you go. That's pretty annoying from Matthias Hunt's standpoint. A Rogue Refiner can block it and force the use of energy, or he could even go for a double block with the Servant of the Conduit, though we'll note that Scott missed his land drop there.
Yeah, even with the Rogue Refiner, still missed his land drop.
Yeah. Surprised. May make him want to protect that Servant of the Conduit a bit.
You know, I have seen games like this quite a lot out of the Temur non-Marvel decks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in a lot of ways, they're structured similarly to Marvel, but they don't have the cheap cycling cards like Censor and Dissenter's Deliverance. So a little bit less control over the number of lands that they draw, but also relevantly, without Aetherworks Marvel, they have fewer ways to come back if they do fall behind. Oh, wow.
Look at this. We've got a heck of an attack here from Matthias. He went for Verdurous Gearhulk, and he is not messing around, Reed. All 4 counters on the Bristling Hydra and just jammed it in the red zone. Like, here, take it.
Yeah, he remembers what happened last game, so he doesn't want to make too big of a creature that can be targeted by Confiscation Coup.
Smart.
What Scott Lipp needs here is Whirler Virtuoso for a little bit of breathing room, a string of chump blockers for the Hydra, because the one thing it doesn't have is Trample.
That's right. If Scott can kind of get things rolling, he can put out a string of blockers for that Bristling Hydra that will really slow down the damage. But, oh boy, not having hit that 4th land is really starting to catch up to Scott here. He's got the Servant of the Conduit and 3 lands, so it's not like he doesn't have plays, but he's got to feel a little cramped, you know?
Yeah, and to finish my thought from a moment ago, the energy deck, this strategy in general, doesn't have a ton of ways to come back from behind. It's more about sticking a resilient threat and pressing that advantage more than having these big, like, swing the game cards. I mean, I say that despite what ended up happening in Game 1. He does have Confiscation Coup, which does fit the bill of a way to come back from behind in this particular matchup.
But he only had one of those.
Yeah.
It's not his game plan, right?
In general, you know, Chandra, Torch of Defiance, Glorybringer, these cards, you want to be even or ahead when you cast them and not behind as Scott Lipp is now.
Yeah. He's got options. He's got a lot of options. He's got 6 cards in hand, 4 mana to work with. Longtusk Cub. What else? Harness Lightning. Harness Lightning targeting Verdurous Gearhulk. Since Matthias is tapped out, that thing's just going to die. And it looks like he's got the Cub after that. And hey, you may as well attack for 3 with the Rogue Refiner.
Geez, so is he planning to take a hit from the Hydra?
Man, that is scary stuff. He's already at 12. He could take up to 10 from it. He could even just die to Blossoming Defense.
That's true.
Which actually Matthias has in his hand, Reed.
Okay,
So yeah, Scott's
block.
just going to have to chump here, it looks like. No, Matthias has 2 can play at that game. I've got my own copy of Long Tusk Cub. And he's got that glint sleeve siphoner that we talked about at the onset of the match. This one's looking pretty good for Matthias.
Yeah. Now, it's a little bit telling that Hunt left up basic Forest when he could have left up Ether Hub, because when I play against Black-Green, the 1 mana spell that I think of most is Fatal Push.
Yep.
It may have been worth it for Hunt to risk losing the 1 energy just to disguise his hand a little bit, because it's so likely that if he does, cast a well-placed Blossoming Defense to ruin Scott's plan, at this point in the game, he's going to win anyway. But that's very subtle and nitpicky on my part.
Not nitpicky. This is why we're here, buddy. Seriously, this is good stuff. This is the interesting, subtle interactions that we get from having, top-tier color commentators like you, and I appreciate you pointing out those little subtleties, because that could matter. Now, like you said, he's in a good spot, and maybe he'll be able to pull the win out either way, but Scott's probably noticed that, right? He's like, wait a second. And he may find out right now just why that basic Forest was left up. He's going for a Magma Spray on the Glint Sleeve Siphoner. And there we go.
Yep.
Blossom Defense saves it.
So the Siphoner, Hunt has a lot of energy, but a lot of choices for what to do with that energy. He is going to start by drawing an extra card, which I like that decision. Can't really go too wrong there.
I always support that, just sort of as a blanket life strategy.
Yeah, drawing extra cards.
It's supported in my house, yeah.
But Scott did find the Whirler Virtuoso. That's what he needed to stabilize this board.
He's got 8 energy to spend. Nice.
Yep. So effectively, we can think of him as having 4 blockers. We'll put 1 Thopter on the Bristling Hydra. That's nearly a foregone conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
And then if the Siphoner attacks, he'll want to try to kill that. Maybe with Whirler Virtuoso and a token. That leaves Long Tusk Cub either getting through or being blocked by Rogue Refiner. Oh, but to change the equation, Matthias has Verdurous Gearhulk.
Oh, wow. All right, well, that is a massive game changer as far as this next attack step goes. So let's let Matthias figure out where he wants to put these counters. Oh, boy.
He knows. He knows where he wants them.
He's not fooling around. He just puts all 4 of them on the Glint Sleeve Siphoner and just sends in the team. Here, you figure it out, Scott.
So that's a 5 toughness Siphoner.
Yeah, with Menace.
He could kill it if he puts Rogue Refiner and some other creatures in front of it. Yeah, his blocks are they're not pretty here.
They really aren't, are they?
I think he probably should try to kill the Siphoner, because it's only going to get worse. If he takes the damage, he's going to be forced to double chump block it every turn for the rest of the game. So I'd be inclined to put, maybe his Refiner and his Virtuoso in front of the Glint Sleeve Siphoner and look for chump blocks elsewhere.
Yeah, he's also, looks like he's a little worried about Long Tusk Cub there. Another card that doesn't get any better for Scott as the game goes longer.
Certainly not.
It can snowball.
This, I think, is slightly suboptimal from Scott because the Virtuoso could kill the Siphoner as easily as the two Thopters, so he could make a functionally the same block with leaving one Thopter back.
Just by flopping those.
Right. These combat steps, though, sometimes you get so hung up in looking at the big picture of things and like, okay, which creature do I want to kill here, that a small detail like that can slip through the cracks. Happens to everyone.
And also, sometimes you lose the game because of it, you know?
Sometimes.
I mean, that's a small mistake, but nevertheless, it is some level of equity lost there for Scott Lipp. We'll see if he can trudge forward. All right, how about a Glory Bringer? He's going to exert it and kill the Verdurous Gearhulk, but he's at 9 with 1 blocker. And he's in trouble.
If there's one piece of good news, it's that Hunt has not drawn a Hissing Quagmire yet. So what you see is what you get in terms of his attackers. But it looks like Long Tusk Cub is virtually guaranteed to get through since Bristling Hydra requires a chump block.
He was flashing a Greenbelt Rampager down there.
Oh, and I like this trick. Every time he gets up to 2 energy, he's going to spend it so that the Greenbelt Rampager can effectively be 1 green, add 1 energy to your mana pool.
Yeah, he keeps spending it on the Long Tusk Cub.
Exactly.
That is a sweet play. Remember, the Greenbelt Rampager will eat 2 energy if it's there. You do not get a choice.
Mm-hmm.
So he has to build it up to 2, spend it, build it up to 2, spend it, which is what he's done. Very cool.
That's an exerted creature.
Right. Let's make sure that it stays tapped. I guess it didn't. He kept the exerted tag on it, but anyway, that was Matthias Hunt winning game number 2 and forcing a third and deciding game to stay. Who's going to stay undefeated here in round number 8 between these two. And I got to point out here, Ree, they need to make sure that they're quick. They're down to just a little over 11 minutes in their round.
Yeah, it's not that these games have been super long in terms of number of turns, but they're just so complicated.
Totally.
The attacks and blocks, these aren't decisions that you can make in 5 or 10 seconds. You really got to survey things and every turn reconsider your options.
Yeah, you were saying you like that about these type of matchups, the creature-on-creature combat and stuff. Yeah, but it is hard, and that's why you like it, right? It's more interesting, more intricate.
I find that there's certain aspects of Magic can sometimes just get too hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like complicated combo decks and weird counterspell mirrors. Like sometimes that's too hard. It's intimidating for a player who's just getting into it. But what I like about these games where both players have creatures and it's tough, interesting combat steps is that's just fun. Like even if you're not making every decision perfectly, you still get to have fun by using your creatures and you feel like you played an interactive game. So it's just great on all levels of competition, I think, from somebody playing their first game of Magic on the kitchen table all the way up to what we see here at the highest level of competition.
So it looks like after the players have presented, we're just crossing the 10-minute threshold in the round. And they are going to be keenly aware, right? Like if you were sitting down in there, you would have said, hey, Judge, how much time do we have in the round? And you would have been looking at your opponent like, did you hear how much time we have in the round?
Yep.
You really want to make sure that you finish, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's kind of a body language etiquette thing that happens when when the clock gets a little tight.
Right. I definitely like to mention it to my opponent in this type of situation in a way where it's like, hey, I'm not trying to rush you, but just remember it's in both of our best interests to finish in time.
And why is that? Why is it in both of your best interests?
Well, the way this tournament is structured, the winner of a match gets 3 match points, the loser gets 0, or if you draw, you both get 1. So just from a raw numbers perspective, you're incinerating 1 match point when you get a draw.
Between the two of you.
Exactly. But more to the point is if you want to make the top 8 of the tournament, if you want to be one of the absolute top finishers, you just need to win a lot of matches. You need to win 13 matches, and a draw is 1 match that you didn't win. So it's if I can go into a match knowing that this match is going to reach its natural conclusion, I'm happy about that, whether I wind up being the winner or the loser.
And knowing that in the long term, you're getting 1.5 points of match points of equity or whatever on average, rather than just 1 in a draw. That's something that I think, people that don't play in tournaments like this, like structured big-time tournaments, may not have as firm of a grasp on.
Definitely.
It's a subtle
thing. And if you're not a super competitive player, it can feel good to be like, okay, like I played my best match, I fought my opponent to a draw. That is good, but in a perfect world, you definitely make sure you finish in time, and that's what's going to be best if your goal is to place highly in the tournament. Yeah,
and when we have 2 high-level players like Matthias and Scott, they know. I mean, I like talking about this stuff in the booth for the benefit of people that maybe don't make it out to GPs that often. By the way, they have just been trading removal for each other's creatures left and right here.
Scott's got to be happy to tag a Longtusk Cub with Magma Spray, because that's a creature that quickly gets out of range of removal, but he actually got it just right at the right time before Matthias has played an energy card. It seems that the players have picked up the speed, just to piggyback on what we've been talking about.
Oh, yeah, you can feel that.
Oh, Scott missing a land drop again. Brutal. All 3 games he's had trouble.
He's playing 4 Attune with Ether in this deck. He has 1 in his graveyard, but, typically speaking, you trim lands for it, so he does not have a whole lot going on there. But he does have blocks for this Bristling Hydra if he'd like. Though the situation is starting to get a little sketchy for him.
And this is what I'm talking about with just a complicated combat step. Even with only 1 creature, Hunt has to think, okay, is it profitable for me if Scott just blocks with the Rogue Refiner? Is it profitable for me if Scott double blocks? What will I do if Scott takes it? All these decisions are things he wants to think about before he dives into anything he's not sure of.
Oh, look at this little combo. Oh, that's nice.
Wow.
He is going off.
Well sequenced by Matthias.
Yes, very much so. So the Whining Constrictor is getting him an extra energy every time he uses the Greenbelt Rampager, which is in his hand. The Bristling Hydra, excuse me, is getting 2 counters on it every time he activates that, which he already did this turn once, and he's going to do again. I'll tell you what, if you like the beef, just the big creature decks, this is one for you. Matthias in every game has made some just truly massive smashers.
Yeah, and I would like to see him not recast the Rampager, just pass the turn with the 3 energy, keep the shields up, make sure nothing goes wrong like it did in the first game with Confiscation Coup.
Yeah, Confiscation Coup is a problem. Also, even a card like Harness Lightning could do enough work here, if the shields are down.
Oh,
Scott has 6 energy, so smart play there from Matthias.
Yeah, that was just a great turn all around.
Just made an 8-7.
It's easy for me to say with Scott having not the best draws and missing land drops, but it feels to me like in the absence of Confiscation Coup, this matchup should favor Black-Green Constrictor, in part because of the card Winding Constrictor. That's one where just if it sticks on the battlefield in any kind of fair fight, it offers a colossal advantage and puts creatures out of range of the red burn spells, out of range of being blocked successfully.
Yeah, and you can see its raw power here, adding both energy and +1/+1 counters multiple times that last turn. Well, here's a Chandra Torch of Defiance that could threaten to kill that Whining Constrictor.
Well, I like this play from Scott because he gets to kill an important creature, and now he has a Planeswalker with 1 loyalty, almost taunting Matthias, like, okay, you can kill my Planeswalker, but are you going to sacrifice 8 damage that could have been sent at my life total?
Yeah, that's a tough decision.
And I think Hunt should probably kill the Planeswalker. If he can't kill Scott in 1 hit, he wants to make sure that Chandra gets off the table, because the second line of text there, the add 2 red to your mana pool, that opens a lot of doors for Scott Lipp with a full hand and missing land drops. He's so close to having lethal here. He just drew Blossoming Defense, 3 energy in the tank, so he can make his creature an 11/11. So it's so tempting to be like, okay, I attack you with the Bristling Hydra and Chandra with Hissing Quagmire. If you block the Quagmire, I can put you to 1, but we know from game 1 that getting the opponent to 1 or 2 life does not necessarily mean a win with this Black-Green Constrictor deck.
No, it doesn't. They don't have a lot of ways to get the last bit of damage through, plus their creatures are generally just very, they're more vertical, right? They're very big individual creatures rather than a bunch of small ones, which are good at getting that last point through. That's why you see Verdurous Gearhulk being such an important card in the deck, that trample. All right. Wow. It looks like Matthias did not attack Chandra there, attacked Scott and put him down to 4.
Yeah, it's a tough decision. I'm nervous about letting the Chandra live, but it also feels wasteful to not put Scott. I mean, this way, what I like about Matthias's play is now Scott is dead if any creature ever gets through because of the Blossoming Defense. All of Hunt's creatures have 2 power, +2 from the Blossoming Defense, and even has 5 mana to make it perfect to activate Quagmire attack and still have 1 mana open. And again, he chose not to cast the Greenbelt Rampager for fear of perhaps a removal spell killing the Hydra. Although maybe he could have done it this turn, because Confiscation Coup stealing a tapped creature might not leave Scott with enough blockers. I don't know. So many variables in this game.
Yeah, and of course the Rampager with the Blossoming Defense is another lethal threat as well, so they can't kill everything, right? Like you said, complicated spot here for both players. And there's that Confiscation Coup. And there's the Blossoming Defense from Matthias Hunt, making that Confiscation Coup look silly. Downright silly. 5 mana. He says, I'll just tap 1, thank you. And that does it. Matthias Hunt wins the match. 2-1. He's 8-0 here in Omaha. One more, he could be undefeated on day 1. We'll be back with more Magic after these messages.